So thanks everyone for joining us today. Just want to make some quick introductions on our side of things. We have a Deputy Chief, Arturo Gonzalez, I think who you all know. We have Commander Dennis Tafoya. We have Deputy Commander Kyle Hartsock, Acting Lieutenant Rick Ingram, and Homicide Sergeant David Fox. And Rebecca's also here from our office, and myself, of course. Just a quick explanation of what we're going to do today. So we're going to provide a brief presentation on homicide trends and some of the ways we're looking at homicides in Albuquerque. We're hoping to provide these types of presentations maybe every month or so about the department. Chief Medina couldn't make it today, but he wants us to do this sort of thing regularly for you all. Some of these will cover trends or priorities of the department. Some will just be informative about certain units, like our tactical unit, explain what they do and kind of what's going on more recently. I know our emergency response teams we've utilized over the past year for protests and mass gatherings, and I think it might be helpful to go over some of what they do and how that whole process has evolved over the last year. So that's what we'll be doing going forward. But starting today, what we're going to do is, first I want to introduce Deputy Commander Kyle Hartsock, who's new to the department. I'm sure you all know Kyle from the District Attorney's Office, and before that he was with the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office during his career. Chief Medina couldn't be here, but he did want me to introduce the Deputy Commander and emphasize his role, which is basically to bring in some outside experience, and he has a lot of experience, obviously, and a fresh perspective into our investigative processes here at APD. And he's only been with us a couple of weeks now, I think, and already been through quite a lot in terms of investigative and kind of just figuring out what's going on at APD. And the other part of it too is, since he worked with the DA's office, this is another opportunity for us to basically improve that relationship, strengthen that relationship, and make sure we have everything ready for prosecution of these homicide cases. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kyle.
Thanks, Gilbert, and thank you everyone for being here today. So what I want to kind of take you through, in working in Albuquerque the past 18 years, but also the past 30 days of working at APD, I've taken the time to really look into a lot of the homicide cases and the trends with the supervisors who are on the call, who have been great to get me updated. I've gone on most of the call outs in the past month to actually physically experience and be on scene. And the things that, we can say about the 2021 homicide rate, I want to start off with, 2020 versus 2019, almost every major American city, especially cities comparable in size to Albuquerque, saw an increase in violent crime and homicides, and a pretty large increase. Albuquerque actually saw a minor reduction by about 5% of homicides from 2019 to 2020. So where other cities really, increased during the middle of the pandemic, Albuquerque was just a little bit less than flat. 2021 is trending higher though. Absolutely, we're not in denial of what that is. Some of the things that we're already starting to do is increase the homicide unit up to 16 full-time detectives. That process doesn't happen overnight. You have to find the right detectives, test for it, and then there's a training process that has to go on to ensure that they are fully instructed and educated on how a homicide case works. Homicide cases can be some of the most complex criminal investigative tasks that a cop has to do. Right now, we're I think 13 or 14 detectives, but they're not all released from training. So that number is still going up. It's only going to keep getting better. And once we're at 16, it's going to allow the homicide unit to also create larger working groups of detectives that handle the on-call. In the past, one detective or maybe two would go on call a week at a time. And if there was a surge in homicides in a short period of time, this put a lot of casework on one person or two persons to handle in a short period of time, which with the increase that we're seeing is ineffective. So once our guys are fully trained up and fully staffed, we're going to see that we're going to be able to spread out their talent and the resources to work on these cases quicker, faster, and with better results. I'm going to share my screen with you now too. Let me see here. And can you guys all see that blue dashboard? Okay. So this is just 2021 cases, but what we've done is, we're starting to look a little bit deeper and starting to track more categories of certain elements we're seeing in homicide cases. And what you're seeing is a summary of this. So, we'd always know the address of a crime, but not necessarily the location. When we break down locations to not just house versus apartment versus hotel versus park, we're also saying, hey, whose house was this? Who was renting the hotel? Is it a third party? Is it a suspect? Is it a victim? As you can see here, the spike in hotel homicides is something that, everyone kind of had a feeling was increasing. But when we really look into it, it's absolutely on the rise. This kind of location analysis allows us, and this has already occurred, to go actively or proactively meet with hotel owners in the community, let them know the trends we're seeing, let them provide us feedback on what they're seeing as well, and try to put our heads together to say, how can we deter this type of violent crime from happening, in or around your businesses? We also look at, the motivations of these crimes. Now, with murders, we don't always know the motivation with absolute certainty because we don't have an offender in custody or our victim is deceased, so they can't tell us what was happening. But what we still do is we say, well, based on the MO and everything we're seeing and the experience of the detectives that are out there, what is likely the motivation for this? And we actually give a certainty on the motivation. But you can see right now robberies are very, very high. And robberies at hotels are very, very high. But we're going to look at those motivations. We're going to track them better. You see the unknown category on there is number 4. Unfortunately, I hate the unknown category. It's my least favorite. But in some cases, we just don't know until we get more evidence back. We're also going to track, and this was already tracked, is weapons used. As you can see, firearms and handguns specifically are overwhelmingly the tool that's being used in homicides in Albuquerque in 2021. And then what's kind of new is, of what we're trying to track here, it's called a victimology. But it's not to shift, the actions of the victim led to their death, but it's instead to understand, hey, what high-risk behavior, if it existed, was occurring from a victim that put them in this precarious situation where they ended up getting killed. And that's what that last category is. And what this is just saying is, what was the victim kind of doing at the time? And selling narcotics right now is very, very high on this list. Domestic violence is always troubling, but it's also high up on this list. Person suffering from homelessness, sadly, is also high on this list right now. Purchasing narcotics. And of course, in some situations, we just don't know exactly what the victim was up to. But this one I want to really highlight, because when we start to look at this, whether it's persons experiencing homelessness or drug dealers or domestic violence, it allows us to better pinpoint what city services we can try to put out there to these higher risk communities to curb the chance that someone might become the next homicide victim or the next homicide suspect. We don't want either to happen. Programs like the violence intervention program, which is great in helping find maybe higher risk persons or higher risk populations to have physical resources go out there and intercede in maybe recent behavior that is happening, or any of the other city services or state services that are out there to offer. It allows us to give us that more pinpoint response to what's going on in their lives. The motivations and location one, that's already led to proactive planning by the Albuquerque Police Department that combines our robbery and our narcotics detectives and the crime strategies unit at the DA's office to put their heads together and come up with proactive law enforcement plans to try to curb the amount of narcotics that are being sold in easy to find areas. Social media is one of these areas when it's so easy to just sell drugs from your living room and your phone. what it does is it makes you an easy target for someone to rob you. When we see the robberies are really high, we see the narcotic selling is really high. We know that people like to meet at hotels possibly to do a drug deal or a gun deal. And all of a sudden you see all these three categories at the very top. So again, that kind of precise understanding of the numbers has led to these proactive attack plans. What we're going to try to bring really new into the homicide unit, and we're working on this currently, it's not in place yet, but we're trying to get more full-time victim advocates to work out of this unit to have much better communication and correspondence with the families of the victims. With this increase in homicides, again, it just makes the detectives really, really busy. And unfortunately, they're not always able to return phone calls or answer certain questions that families might have, and the families deserve to have their questions answered. So we're looking at adding full-time advocates in the homicide unit, where their primary duty is really just to update the families, make sure they're connected to whatever services they need, and at the very least, always answer their phone or return their call in a promptly manner to remind these families that we care about your loved one. We are still working on it, and that you can always call us and get any answers that we're able to provide. And what's also coming in June this year as a first to APD is what's called the Detective Academy. It's going to have about 40 police officers in it. Most of them are current detectives, not all of them are. But we are going to modernize the investigative educational process that cops go through. It's a 2-week-long course that's going to really emphasize on strong court-accepted interview techniques, how to use technology to build up your cases, everything from cell phones and social media and surveillance video that are out there. But it's also going to cover forensic evidence collection, child abuse response, search warrant drafting, report writing, and other practices that most cops just don't get in the basic academy. The basic academy is really driven towards a patrol officer. It doesn't really touch on detective work. So we're going to make this 2-week course the best example in the state of how to teach a police officer how to do really solid, robust detective work using the best tools possible. The crime lab has also upgraded their DNA machines, which allows a wider range of testing on DNA samples on crime scenes. The department already has and is successfully using ShotSpotter, which gives a quicker response from patrol officers to areas. And I can tell you, at least on 2 of the homicides I've been out on in the last month, ShotSpotter was able to detect the gunshots that led to the death we were investigating. That kind of technology gives us pinpoint time accuracy and location accuracy of exactly where a shooting took place and exactly when it took place. That allows us to find surveillance video, interview different witnesses we might not have known existed, and later on when other evidence comes in, once again, we can be much more thorough on knowing exactly what time and the exact place that a gun was fired. So all these things together, they're still coming together. We're really confident it's going to improve our ability to solve these cases, solve them quicker, and hopefully that's also going to start to stem the violence that we're seeing as well. When there's a quicker response from police to hold people accountable for violent crimes, it sends a clear message. The last thing I'll say before I give it back to Gilbert is, if you're watching this and you have a family member or a loved one that you think is, kind of living a high-risk lifestyle right now, whether it's drugs or mental illness, we encourage you to reach out to them. Go, give them a hug, tell them you love them. We know it's probably been hard. Get a hold of the city. There's lots of services, or the state, that we could try to offer them to curb the high-risk behavior. We know that if we can help in those areas, we're also going to help the high victim rate in these violent crimes because they live similar lifestyles and they're high risk, and we don't want anyone else to get hurt. We absolutely don't want anyone else to be killed.
Thanks, Kyle. Before I turn it over for questions, a couple of things I wanted to point out. We do have our new Albuquerque Community Safety Department that's going online, and I think that department's going to be a huge, make a huge difference, I think, in how we as a community respond and guide people to services they might need. So I know they're thinking through a lot of these complicated issues, and for example, you know, if our officers aren't out on the streets kind of dealing with some of these issues that don't really need a law enforcement element to it, that new department will have the folks that will be doing that, and a lot more expertise and access to resources. So there's that. I know there was an op-ed in the Journal I read this morning from, I think, one of the judges about a new program they're doing in terms of getting services to folks. So I think it's going to take the whole community and the whole criminal justice system to kind of move together and make all of this work. But I think from the homicide department, homicide unit perspective, we want to provide as much information we can and help, you know, get to the root causes of some of these things and work with everyone else in the community. One final thing, I know Kyler mentioned this, but he mentioned it the other day that we talked about utilizing Crime Stoppers a lot more to solve crimes and use it more quickly than we have in the past, I think. So as members of the media, I think you guys are great partners in terms of getting information out from Crime Stoppers, and, you know, even other crimes that aren't homicides. I think we've had a great success with that and identifying offenders or providing more evidence for detectives. So we're going to use that a lot more and work closely with Crime Stoppers on that. So with that, I just want to turn it over and see if anyone has any questions.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Hi guys, I'm just, a lot of these, I'm just looking at your information. This is really helpful. A lot of these are involve narcotics. How big is the narcotics unit right now? I'm just curious about that too. I know you're expanding homicide detectives, but how many narcotics detectives do you have?
I could go ahead and answer that. We currently have 4.
Are there any plans to expand that?
Yeah, there is. With the next class that's coming out in July, we've had some good conversations with the chief, and he understands the importance to bolstering not only narcotics, but a lot of other investigatory type units. So that's coming up. Currently, to bridge that gap, we're working very well with our federal partners to include DEA, ATF, FBI to assist with the narcotics issue. So we're moving forward, and I feel confident that with the class that are coming out here shortly, that we're going to strengthen some of these units that are lower than what we would like.
Can I ask, Art, what was it, like say 10 years ago? How many detectives were in the narcotics unit?
I don't want to misspeak. I don't want to misspeak reference to the numbers, but back in the day when I first came on, we did have 3 teams.
That's what I thought.
Back in the day, and due to the situations that we all are aware of through attrition and the changes, the retirement plans, narcotics was a unit that took a hit.
Okay.
The other thing I'd point out too, I think that Kyle mentioned a little while ago was I think the narcotics and robbery, especially working together with the DA's office, is kind of having a force multiplier effect as well, and with homicide now too.
Yeah, and I could go ahead and expand just because you know, our narcotics is currently shorter than what we would like, and we have plans to bolster it. Like I said, we're reaching out to other specialized units that could go ahead and assist. Like Gilbert was saying and Kyle was saying, you know, the robbery and narcotics nexus work is we're very aware of the situation. So robbery is involved. That brings in our violent crime task force and such. So we have other units that bolster the investigations as deemed necessary.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Real quick, Kyle, are you able to take the document off the thing? Okay, there you go. So I think Matt Risen was next.
Yeah, thanks, Gilbert. So I had a few questions. Are there more people being robbed during homicides than in years past? Do we know that?
I can answer that. We don't know that clearly just yet, Matt. What we've done right now is get this data at least for 2021, so we can have a clear understanding of what's happening right now. We don't have it backwards that detailed yet to do comparisons. We would like to try to at least go back through the 2020 cases sometime soon to at least have a year-over-year comparison, but we don't currently have it.
Okay. And then are these the homeless victims? Are some of them being targeted at random, or is it mostly kind of disputes that break out?
I feel like it's both, and Sergeant Fox and Lieutenant Ingram, feel free to jump in. I feel like it's a little bit of both. It seems like there are disputes that are happening, like the one at Coronado Park this past weekend was definitely a dispute between really more than two individuals that led to a homicide. There's other ones though where unfortunately, some of these cases are the hardest to solve, or we don't clearly know what led up to it. It could be random. It could have been a dispute. We just don't know.
Okay. And when does the academy start, and will current and future detectives go through the academy?
It's scheduled to start in the middle of June. So about a little more than about 5 weeks away from now. It is mostly current detectives that are going to be in this one, although we're hoping to add some patrol officers as well that have the ambition and motivation to want to learn these things.
And who will run the academy?
It's being internally put on by us, but we're using outside vendors for probably just over half of the training is being put on by outside vendors, and the rest of it's going to be done internally.
Okay.
Okay, Ludella, are you on? Do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, thank you for taking my question. So earlier last month, there was a homicide investigation that involved social media use and drug transaction. How reliable and how is it helping evidence gathered through social media posts during criminal investigations?
It broke up right in the middle for me. I'm sorry. I know you said there was a robbery or there was a social media investigation, but can you repeat the rest?
Yeah. Okay. So earlier the last month, there was a homicide investigation that involved social media use and drug transactions. How reliable and how is it helping evidence gathered through social media posts during criminal investigations?
Well, we look at social media like any other evidence that could be collected, like surveillance video, for example. Witnesses make us aware of it or able to find it on our own. And when we do, we simply try to capture it or write search warrants to the companies to get copies of it if it's been uploaded to the cloud. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Right.
Okay, Brittany, you want to answer your questions?
Yeah, hi, thank you. I really enjoyed that, all that information, so I really appreciate that. I do have a clarification question on the victim behavior, because I think, when we think about crime, obviously we don't want to become victims. So I'm looking on there, and obviously there are far less numbers that you have up there than victims. So I'm wondering, are there more categories? Why aren't more in the unknown category? It just seems like there's a lot of numbers for victims missing from that. So can you provide some clarity?
Yeah, and this thing, what you're looking at wasn't meant, I'm going to share my screen again. It's showing you kind of the top ones, because ideally what we're going to use this for is so we can quickly see rising trends, if that makes sense. But can you see my screen again, Brittany?
I can, yes.
Okay,
yeah.
So if you look over here, we can grab this and we can just move it down.
Okay, but does that doesn't still come out to 42 victims? Does it?
I haven't done the hard math. It should, because it's coming from the same data set.
Deputy Commander,
Can
there's
we
also a couple victims with a couple cases with multiple victims.
Right, and so if you look up here, it's homicide cases, which is call-outs, but we have more because we've had 2 cases with two victims each.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I'm getting at. So obviously selling narcotics, that's 9 victims that you guys have in that category. That's not a lot. So it doesn't seem like all of these people are high-risk victims.
Well, I guess, 9 out of 40 is 25%. I feel that's pretty statistically significant in terms of a behavior that is well above all the other behaviors.
I guess my question is, are you guys concerned about the other categories? What are some of those other categories? And I guess, how do you target those? Intimacy, argument.
Yeah, we got to clean that up because argument's in here twice. Yeah, and the intimacy ones are more like, people were setting up a date and then it turned into something else and then someone got killed. So it's different than domestic violence. Arguing are really the individual disrespect type category that you see in motivations. That's one of the toughest to do because that's more FU, emotional outburst problems, and now someone's dead, right? Those happen really quick. Domestic violence is easier to target in the sense that there's more of a traditional, or a structure set up in place with outside organizations and specialties that can help people escape domestic violence.
I guess my question really, sorry that it's not getting straight to the point. How do you target those other homicides, 25% narcotics? I think you guys have gone over time and time again how you plan on targeting that, what you plan on doing with some of those programs. But I guess my question is, with some of those, the other 75%, what do you do to address that?
It's a great question, and I don't think we have the immediate answer in that kind of vague of a way. We'd have to look at the specific issue more. Right now, because the top three are so high up, it makes more sense for us to throw most of the thinking into the top three in my book, because that will have the biggest impact on reducing homicides. Some of these categories where there are one or two, honestly, that's very difficult, right? In a year span, how do you prevent one murder is a difficult question. How can you reduce a top category, though, by half or by more is a better problem that we're trying to work out first.
And then can you take that down again? I just want to see your face for a few of my other questions. Thank you.
Oh, take down the chart.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I'm sorry.
Can I just jump in real quick, Brittany, and add something else?
Yeah.
I noticed just yesterday a couple of different crimes, but there was one, and I made a note of it, where our Southeast PRT team, the proactive response team, was patrolling the Motel 6 on Avenida Cesar Chavez. So that's been one of our problem areas with a lot of criminal activity, like stolen vehicles, drug activity, firearm activity. And so those officers that were on proactive patrol were able to go there. They discovered an individual that was criminally trespassing. He admitted to him that he had a concealed firearm without a permit. They looked further, and he had the gun. He had 67 rounds of ammunition, and he had narcotics on him. One of the officers recognized him from the day before as a suspect in a kidnapping at the hotel. They had someone hostage with a gun. So, we don't see these arrests all the time or know what's behind them, but this is an issue where we targeted the hotel with our teams, and it touches narcotics and firearms and all of these different, I think, elements that we're talking about. So I think it shows up in a lot of what we're doing throughout the department, not just on homicide investigations necessarily.
Yeah, interesting. And then so with the information, and you don't have to show it again, but was APD tracking this type of information prior, or did you really come in and say, okay, here's how we can kind of get to the root of it, here's what we need to do, here's how we need to categorize things, and how did that come about?
No, I think a lot of this was already being tracked. I definitely think I added the victim behavior part. The victimology part was, I didn't find anywhere that was actively being tracked. Although if you talked to the detectives or talked to anyone, they're like, yeah, it seems to be a lot of people are doing this and it's turning out bad. So it was one of those things where they had it up here, but didn't have it really codified anywhere. So that was definitely new. What I've done is sat down with the homicide supervisors and we clarified some of the categories. We clarified some of the locations. Some of them seem to be kind of either redundant or unclear. So what we did is we made them more clear, because the point of data like this is let's do something with it. Let's not just catalog it to catalog it. Let's have it so we can put something into effect. Make a theory, and then let's test the theory and see if it can make a change.
Okay, thank you so much. And I'm wondering next about caseload. So we're talking about hopefully 16 homicide detectives once everyone goes through training, with us already around 42 homicides for the year. I'm just wondering, what nationwide, is there a standard of cases? And then, you know, if we continue with this trend, I'm just curious if we would have enough even with 16, I guess is my question.
The national standard is 4 to 6 new homicide cases for a detective per year. Because again, you know, the thing I tell these guys working on homicide cases like the quarterback on the team, you don't have to score every touchdown or make every play, but you have to move a lot of pieces. You have to understand what the other side is doing, what all of your people are doing. There's a coach on the side. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to manage. That's what you got to do well, which is why 4 to 6 per year is the accepted standard. And if you go more than that, you're going to start having problems getting cases done quick enough. And that's the problem we're solving right now.
And I want to know, you know, you're talking about this detective academy, which sounds awesome. But you mentioned, I think, 40 detectives, so obviously more than just the homicide detectives. Who's this academy for? And is this a way to, you know, say we have a crazy number more homicides this year? I mean, is this a way to get other people ready to go should they need it?
Yeah, this academy is set for any detective. I can tell you that. It's not a homicide specific academy, but every tool that they're going to develop in this training, you can use this from auto theft to robberies to narcotics to homicides to child abuse, sexual assaults. That's what this is geared towards. So it's anyone and everyone. What we need in homicide detectives, again, is you need quarterbacks, you need case agents. You need that type of personality and perseverance to be able to manage a lot of things and keep pushing it forward throughout.
And is it geared more toward like the investigative tools for these detectives, or more prosecutorial, is that the word, tools for the district attorney's office and getting these guys, you know, behind bars?
Sure. Well, it's the same. It's tools and techniques is what the training is gonna get at, because doing an interview isn't really a tool, it's a technique, but doing the interview in a constitutionally safe way that produces reliable results that can be tested in court is important, because at the end of the day, if we're collecting evidence or statements that we can't use in court, what's the purpose, I guess? So it's definitely tied together, but the training isn't geared towards let's get convictions necessarily. Let's just do things a standard constitutionally safe way with a higher quality so we can solve more cases and get better outcomes all the way through.
Okay, one more, and I'm sorry, I'll pass it to
Can I ask
everyone
a question?
Okay, go ahead, Nancy.
Can we backtrack on this? Because I've reported this a few times. I just want to see if anything's changed. Kyle, you said that the national average is 4 to 6, and Rick, I know I've talked to you about this too. What are the? And you keep adding to detectives to the homicide unit, but what's the caseload right now? The national average is supposed to be 4 to 6. How many?
It's 4 to 6 new cases a year, Nancy. Just to clarify. So don't give them more than 4 to 6 new cases a year. But I'll let Rick answer the caseload question.
Sure, and we've been battling the caseload for quite some time. I think with the cases right now, depending on the detective, and with 40 cases, we have about 10 detectives that are operational at some point. So we're looking about each of those guys having about 4 cases. Some of them vary quite a bit, and we're only in month 5, so we expect that to go up as the year goes on. We're taking measures like Deputy Commander talked about making the call-out teams a little bit bigger so that we have more detectives available at any given time. Instead of the traditional 2-man rotation, we're trying to do a 3 or 4-man rotation to spread out that caseload between that team to make it a little bit better.
Okay.
Did it go through?
One other thing too, maybe DC Gonzalez could touch on this, but how many detectives? I know we have well over 100 detectives throughout the department. And go ahead, DC.
I can give you a hard number on how many detectives are in the investigative bureau. We could always provide that through our roster, if everybody would like it. But like I stated before, and it's important, is that a lot of these detectives, even though one detective is in homicide, for example, and another detective is in sex crimes or robbery, I mean, they could be used to supplement that particular unit if needed. And we've had some great successes where we crossed, let's say, across the street to gather the support from another section or unit. So we're moving forward. The investigations that are getting done, it would be of everybody's benefit, to get to the numbers that we need through homicide, because we've seen successes where if a detective is allowed to do a thorough initial investigation on the onset, as opposed to getting another one the day after, or let's say another one the day after that, it causes a little of a hindrance to the initial call out. But we are using everybody's on board. And then, like I said, I commented with our federal and state partners as well.
And if I could just add to it, and maybe I'm off base on this, so correct me if I'm wrong, but is the Detective Academy also meant to help with field officers or other officers who often get on scene first before detectives are called out? And I know Sergeant Ingram has pointed out a couple times where the field officers have actually done a really good job of getting good information right at the onset, which helped homicide detectives get a head start on things. Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why, allowing patrol officers to also attend the training is always a benefit, because they're always the first on scene. The evidence is always the freshest when they arrive. So giving them the training and the tools and the confidence to handle these things before the call out occurs is always going to be beneficial for every type of crime investigation.
Okay. Matt, did you have some follow-up questions? Matt Risen?
Yes, I did. Thank you. So I was curious, not a lot of times, but a few times when I've talked to victims, families, they talk about Crime Stoppers and how a lot of the alerts don't go out for, a year after the case. And I witnessed that myself, obviously, as we get the alerts, and a lot of them do come out, it seems like, a long time after the homicides have happened, sometimes up to a year after. I was curious if there was a reason for that, and if, what keeps Crime Stoppers from being utilized, at the time of a homicide. I mean, it seems like a pretty valuable tool when you talk about wanting to try to make connections with the community and kind of, give some incentive for people to come forward and talk and maybe give an anonymous tip. I was kind of curious what was stopping that from happening or being used so often as it could be.
Yeah, and I don't think anything was stopping it from happening, Matt, but that is something we've already identified that is the timeline is going to go quicker on vetting information or surveillance video or anything else. And as soon as we have no more, internal use to keep it unrevealed, we're going to use Crime Stoppers faster. So I think what you're going to see too, especially over the summer, hopefully there's no more homicides the rest of the year, and this press conference is just going to be kind of silly. But if there's any more at all, you're going to see the speed on Crime Stoppers tips increasing from the date of the crime to when the tip is coming out. Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks. That's all my questions.
And
Thank you all. I have to jump off. Thank you so much.
Bye, Nancy.
I have a question. Just a clarification again, sorry. And Rick, maybe this is for you. You said 10 operational homicide detectives right now. Why is it only 10 if there are like 13?
Most of those guys are going through our training phase. So we have gone through some growing pains, getting those additional personnel here and getting them through the training. We have various levels of training that they're at. So that's why. And we don't put these guys when they come in straight from, one guy just transferred from internal affairs. We don't just give him on his first day here a homicide investigation and without training. So we have a two-phase or two-tier training system that they have to complete before they're operational.
Okay, and then my other question, when when do cases go cold? So I know 4 to 6 per year, but if we're talking about 10 homicide detectives and we're talking about all the homicides last year, so these guys or girls already have obviously a caseload, which is, I guess, with the national trend, obviously. But I'm just wondering, I mean, what are the active, how many active cases? Is that hard to say? And then if you could just answer, like, when does a case go cold, or is it just always on their desk, if that makes sense?
Sure. So we do have a process for cold case. So when cases are considered cold, that's when a detective determines that they've basically exhausted all workable leads. After that period of time, then the case is reviewed by the section sergeant, lieutenant, and then at that time, and these are cases that have been thoroughly reviewed, then it's put into their cold case. So basically inactive. We still house it here within the section, but it is not considered to be necessarily on their caseload. I don't have a good number for you as far as what we have as far as open active investigations. Not right offhand, but that's something that we can get with Gilbert and get to you. But for the most part, it's when they extinguish all leads or all workable leads. And that's, I mean, there's some good things from the BJA about the Bureau of Justice Administration about working cold cases and what status, and we're in line with those principles.
Okay, that's all that I have.
I just had one final question about the Detective Academy, if that's okay. I know that it starts mid-June, it's 5 weeks long, and that they'll be rotational with, you said, about 40 detectives in each class. How many are you planning on holding each year?
I don't think we have that quite figured out yet. We're going to do this first one, and I can tell you I'm going to sit through the whole thing to help audit it so we can see, did it go smoothly? Do we want to change anything? And then we'll start setting the next ones. I think ideally, though, it'd be nice to have this at least twice a year. It's 2 weeks long, which is a very long training for a police officer to be taken away from their primary duty. But I think twice a year is a good goal to have. This is going to be the first one, so we got to make sure it's working correctly.
Thank you.
Brittany, one thing I want to point out too, in terms of not cold cases, but kind of still active cases that maybe need a little push. We're starting a new thing. Rebecca Atkins actually is spearheading this with the homicide unit, but we're going to start doing videos and highlighting some of the cases where we think that with the right attention to them, we could push along and maybe get some results to them. So she's interviewing victims, family members, and detectives, and we're going to start producing those pretty soon. So hopefully we can push that out, push it on social media, just get some attention to it.
Cool, thank you.
Okay. So with that, I appreciate everyone's time and all the questions. And thanks, Kyle, for everything, and everyone over at the Criminal Investigations. So just let me know if you have any follow-up questions. Thank you, everybody.